Hello.
What do you have to say to the trans students on this campus who actively feel victimized by your presence here today?
Life's tough. Get a helmet, man. I'm too pregnant for this. Next question.
Recently in Texas, there was a boy who won the girls wrestling state championship. Do you think that he should have been allowed to compete in that division?
I think that a man taking down a woman on a map should warrant a call to the police.
Wonderful.
Candace Owens is known for her outspoken views and unapologetic commentary on social and political issues. But what sets Candace apart is her ability to call out the hypocrisy she sees within this movement, challenging its core principles and sparking heated debates. Recently, she was banned from entering Australia ahead of her speaking tour. Is it her outspoken nature that has led the Australian government to take this bold step?
My question is, how do you support your father for the things that he said, such as he believes that you should grab women by the...
He didn't say that. I want to say something. Let me do it.
No, that's a ridiculous question, first and foremost, because I'm sure you've never said anything bad.
Are you mad?
I'm sure.
But you just...
In this video, we'll dive into how Candace Owens is shaking up the woke narrative, confronting the contradictions, and why she was banned from entering Australia.
Hope you weren't a Bud Light investor, Candace.
Fortunately, I was not and am not, and I will say this, nothing says I hate fratty quite like blowing up a condom at a booze fest, which is exactly what she's doing in those photos. You can't make this up, but I am going to have to defend her because, listen, she's lying because she has to lie. Of course, she enjoys a frat culture. Of course, she had a good time while she was in college like every other person, but now, to survive in woke culture, you have to become a liar. You have to pretend that you think fat is beautiful. You have to pretend to be race obsessed. You have to pretend that you think Dylan Mulvaney is a woman and should be included in female spaces.
Candace Owens really takes a swing at so-called woke culture in her comments about Bud Light's partnership with Dylan Mulvaney. She argues that corporate leaders, like the ones at Bud Light, seem more focused on pushing progressive values rather than staying true to their brand's roots. According to Owens, to thrive in today's world, people have to pretend to believe in things they might not truly feel. Basically, they have to lie. She points out how these companies are prioritizing inclusivity and shifting their image, but it often feels like that they're doing so at the cost of their original audience.
There's one more thing I want to say here, Tucker, because it's deeply upsetting to me. There is a post-analysis that needs to happen here on why it is that Dylan Mulvaney for 365 days was able to openly mock women, to openly take the spaces of women, to get contracts from Ulta Beauty, to take, contracts from other women and all these sponsorships, and nobody cared. Until suddenly, Dylan Mulvaney traversed into a male space and it became unacceptable. Why? Because men don't tolerate this level of lies in the way that women do, right? We respond emotionally and not rationally. We should have been the ones to put an end to Dylan Mulvaney, but we didn't because we feel bad. And shouldn't we just feel bad for men that want to be women and mock us and put on lipstick and pigtails and call themselves a girl? I think not, Tucker, but woke culture says yes.
Owens also touches on the way men and women react differently to issues like gender identity. She believes that women, for the most part, have been more tolerant of figures like Mulvaney, while men, in her view, are less accepting of what they see as mocking traditional gender roles. She even goes as far as to say that, quote, men have to rescue women from this ideology. It's a bold take. And while it is clear that Owens is coming from a conservative perspective, it does highlight the tension between corporate decisions and the customers they're trying to please. Makes you think about how companies today are balancing between pushing social issues and keeping their loyal base happy.
Hello.
What do you have to say to the trans students on this campus who actively feel victimized by your presence here today?
Life's tough. Get a helmet, man. I'm too pregnant for this. Next question.
As a non-binary person, what do you have to tell me about my identity? Because I know for a fact I'm not confused.
Okay, next question. Great statement. That's a statement. That's a statement. Okay, you know your identity. You're not confused. Congratulations, sweetheart.
In this exchange, Candace Owens responds pretty bluntly to a student who asks what she has to say to trans students feeling quote-unquote victimized by her presence. Her answer, life's tough, get a helmet, shows she's not interested in addressing their concerns about feeling uncomfortable, and instead suggests they should toughen up. Some might see this as straightforward, saying that people should be resilient instead of focusing on feeling offended. But for those who feel strongly about understanding and supporting gender identity issues, her response might come across as dismissive and insensitive. Then, when a non-binary student confidently says they're not confused about their identity, Owens replies sarcastically with, "You're not confused. Congratulations, sweetheart." That comment seems to mock the student's certainty, implying their identity isn't something worth serious discussion. This back and forth highlights the divide in views. Owens sees it as pushing for self-reliance, while the student likely wanted recognition and respect for their identity. Now, before we move further, let's discuss why the Australian government has banned her. Candace Owens was banned from entering Australia because the government believed her visit could cause division and harm social harmony. She had planned a speaking tour across major cities, but her history of controversial statements raised concerns. For example, she's been accused of spreading anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and making inflammatory comments about Muslims and LGBTQ+ communities. Australia's Minister of Home Affairs said her views could incite discord and didn't align with the country's commitment to mutual respect. Jewish organizations also supported the ban, arguing she didn't meet the character requirements for entry due to her divisive and harmful rhetoric.
Said to you, despite how you're feeling, what are the real-world implications that suggest to you that you are somehow beneath men? You might have a personal experience where a man...
we can talk about sexual assault everywhere, in the military, in the home.
So are these the things that you're fighting to end sexual assault?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, great. You don't have to be a feminist to fight to end sexual assault.
In this conversation, Candace Owens challenges the college feminist by asking her to explain why she feels women are still beneath men, especially when it comes to issues like sexual assault. Owens is basically questioning whether you need feminism to address problems like sexual assault, or if it's something that society can tackle as a whole without tying it to a specific ideology. She's making the point that you don't have to identify as a feminist to want to fight against things like sexual violence. According to her, these are issues everyone should care about, not just those in the feminist movement. She also seems to suggest that since women have already gained many rights and protections, the need for feminism isn't as pressing as it once was.
My question is just, I looked at some data while you were speaking about the gender pay gap in the UK and the US. So apparently it's 17% in the UK and 19% in the US.
No, it's not.
And it's WEF data. So I just looked at
that.
Right.
The
So
myth of the gender
World
pay gap.
Economic from in 2015.
Right.
In
so,
percentage.
Happy to talk about this.
This is
so
like,
my question is basically, what do you think are the causes of this?
It doesn't exist.
Well, there is a cause for it. I'll tell you what it is.
And do you think there should be public measures to tackle it? And the causes and the public
Fair
reaction.
question.
So
I get it all the time because obviously I'm like the anti-feminist. So people are always like, how can you deny the gender, the wage gap?
Candace Owens brings up some interesting points about the gender pay gap, arguing that it's not really about discrimination, but more about the choices people make. She says women often choose careers in fields like fashion or textiles, which don't pay as much, while men tend to go for higher paying fields like business or engineering. She also mentions that women might leave the workforce earlier to focus on family, which contributes to the pay gap.
Okay, so when I went to university, all of the girls that I was friends with were majoring in fashion and textiles and merchandising, and they all went off to intern at Vogue. And pick out Prada bags that maybe Kate Moss would wear on the cover of something. The average pay for that, if you want to be in fashion when you get out of school, is $20,000. Men were majoring in business and engineering and things that when you get out of school, you get paid more. If our interests, if we're going to go in and we're not going to be taking serious majors, and we're shocked when we find out the world doesn't need more people to pick out Prada bags for Kate Moss's shoot. I mean, that's not a gender wage gap. That's an interest gap, right? And that's what's happening. Also, women, we have different interests. Women aspire to get married, they aspire to have children. They leave the workforce earlier. Every single one of my girlfriends, what I'm saying is that a person that is a brain surgeon should not get paid the same amount as a person that wants to pick out Prada bags for the rest of her life.
Now, while it is true that career choices and life priorities play a role, her argument doesn't really consider some of the deeper reasons behind those choices. For example, societal expectations and gender roles might influence women to pursue jobs that are considered more, quote-unquote, feminine, and those jobs often don't pay as much. Plus, the gender pay gap is still noticeable even in industries where men and women do similar work, which suggests that bias or other factors could be at play. I do agree with her point that encouraging women to go into higher-paying fields like engineering is a good idea, but it's also important to recognize the barriers women face in breaking into those male-dominated areas. It's a complex issue that can't be fully explained by career choices alone.
Shouting and booing the officers. That's a black officer in the back right there. Are you aware that there are black officers in the world? In District 11 in Chicago, which I went to go visit and speak to those cops, they are all black. When you launch a war on cops, you are launching a war on black men as well. I'm so ashamed of the way you guys are acting and the fact that you love being oppressed. Victim mentality is not cool. We're oppressed. 400 years of slavery, Jim Crow, which, by the way, none of you guys lived through. Your grandparents did, and it's embarrassing that you utilize their history and you come in here with more emotion than they ever had when they were living through it. It's embarrassing. You're not living through anything right now.
Candace Owens calls out the hypocrisy of her audience, particularly their reaction to a black police officer, pointing out that a war on cops also harms black men. She criticizes the audience for glorifying a victim mentality, claiming they use past injustices like slavery and Jim Crow as an excuse, despite not having lived through those times. Owens argues that the emotional responses they display are exaggerated compared to the stoic resilience shown by those who actually endured those hardships. Her message challenges the idea of continuing to play the victim, urging people to stop exploiting historical struggles for attention and to acknowledge progress made since those eras. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown of Candace Owens and her take on woke culture, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Let us know your thoughts on her views in the comments down below. And as always, let's keep the conversation going. See you in the next video.